And I said, do you know that Bruce Lee died from the same cause as Apple Computers, Steve Jobs? And he said, oh, that's interesting. Let me think about that for a second. So we talked about it. And basically, it was that both of them had too many things going at the same time, and they didn't get enough balanced living, not enough having eating and slowing down and letting the food digest. And so Bruce Lee's parents, because of their ancestry, they had to work really hard on, in manual labor. Now Bruce Lee's parents were acting and directing and making money doing that. But his parents did opium. He had a lot of things to overcome, and so his first thing that he did is he fought his classmates when they picked on him for not being able to follow the lessons in class and not being able to do well in his tests. And when the teacher chose him to answer a question, he would often, and could have been every day or twice a day, go out and fight with these people in his school.
Hi, this is Sifu Slim, author of The Aging Athlete. In this book, you're going to get to hear about two different groups of former high-performance athletes. One group, which is made up of 90% of the former athletes, does not do physical activity on a regular basis and tends to suffer the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. The other group, which is made up of 10% of the former athletes, is doing physical activity on a regular basis and tends to thrive through the aging process, or at least has a better chance at coping with the aging process. We could have taken these folks to a lab and done all kinds of tests on them. Instead, we slowed them down and sat them down and asked them, in their own words, to describe why they're wired the way they are, so that we all, former athletes and non-athletes, can use some of their inspirational and motivational and mindset lessons in our own lives. I hope you pick up a copy today. You can go to theagingathlete.com. And when you have a chance to read it, I'd love to hear back from you to find out what your thoughts are on the stories of these aging athletes.
Awesome.
Hi there, I'm Sifu Slim, and I am in Reno, Nevada, where I came on a short trip, and then I extended it to a little bit longer trip, and it's just been lovely. I'm up at 4,500 feet, it's quite high. It's halfway to the top of most of the high skiing mountains in this area, Lake Tahoe, Heavenly Valley, Squaw Valley, all these beautiful skiing areas that were, Squaw Valley was home to a famous Olympics in America's past, and famous hockey games, et cetera, in the decades before. When I was a young lad, Squaw Valley Olympics, you could look that up. And you have beautiful evergreens in this area, and then you have this very deep and pure Lake Tahoe, which is one of the wonders of the world, just an incredible place. And so I'm speaking today for some 6,000 miles away with Ayub, who's got a really cool program that is called Thinking Men. And Ayub, say hello to us and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everybody, hey Sifu, thank you for inviting me. So I'm Ayub. I go by Jacob on Twitter, which is my main channel, and there I help people basically with bad habits and addiction with my coaching program, and so that's that. And at the moment I'm in Italy, yeah, a bit far away from Sifu, in Bologna, which is in the certain part of Italy, and it's nice to meet you all.
So I've enjoyed going to Italy. I think my first trip to Italy was in 1984, and it was a ski trip there. And I was living in Aix-en-Provence, not too far from Marseille, France, in the south of France in Provence, beautiful area. And I thought I should do some skiing. And since I had already been skiing in France in the Chamonix area when I was a high school student at age 18, I asked my friend, his older brother who spoke Italian, and their father came from Italy. When the father was in his 20s with his three brothers, they came for a better life to seek their fortune in France. And then they stayed in the Aix-en-Provence area. And I asked the older brother of my friend where to go, and he gave me a number of places in Italy. And I wound up connecting with some friends I had met in France a few years before, and it turned out they were going to Santa Cristina in Il Dolomiti, and I wound up going there at Christmas time, and it was one of the most special Christmas trips I've ever done, and I'll do another video about that sometime in the future. So tell us what you know about the Dolomiti, Ayub.
I mean, it's quite a destination, to be honest. A lot of people, I mean, even Italian, like they wait basically the whole year to go to the Dolomiti on vacation, to ski to the mountains with the families. So yeah, it's really beautiful. I mean, I've never been that. I'm not that big of a fan of skiing, to be honest. I prefer the sea, not that much the mountain, but yeah, a lot of people go there. I mean, I'm quite sure it's fun, and I will probably go eventually, but yeah, we will see about that. But yeah, if you don't know where to go on holiday, just go to Dolomiti, and yeah, you'll have a good time for sure.
So years ago, during my youth in the 70s and the 80s, I think people thought of ski towns as places you could go hike in the summertime, and then you could go ski in the wintertime. And then with the advent of the mountain bike, which was a 1980s project, several different people claim, or people claimed that they claimed, or I should say, people suggest that these people invented the sport of mountain biking and the mechanical equipment of cycles that could do those things. They wound up turning a lot of these ski places into these mountain biking terrains, which for people who like getting places more quickly, they like the daringness of, going up and down hills and trying to balance on a mountain bike. It's, I've done a lot of running and hiking through mountain trails and through, we have to cross rivers and things. Nothing's harder and more thrilling probably, and more death defying and more injury causing than mountain bike. If I had to add up my 100 athletic friends of the last 30 years and look at the accidents that they've had in terms of their physical activities, mountain biking would be the highest one. And it could be somebody who mountain bikes 5 days a week who falls and lands on their shoulder and breaks a collarbone or hits their head, or somebody who just does it on a one trip with some of their friends. It's common that people get hurt on mountain biking. Ayub, have you tried mountain biking?
No, to be honest, never. I just use it in the normal streets. But I have friends that they do it a lot. They enjoy it a lot, and yeah, majority of them, they one way or another, they got injured. I mean, nothing serious, thank God. But yeah, it's from what I understand, it's really easy to get hurt because it's not like the street. It's not like it's quite a difficult terrain. So it's there's a lot of uncertainty there. That's the right word to use, I think. So yeah,
And
I
it's
don't know. I
something.
would probably try, but yeah, let's just hope I don't get hurt. But yeah.
There's a on a mountain bike, just imagine you're going downhill, and so you have all your weight and the gravity of the earth that's creating velocity. And when you're going at velocity and there are rocks and there are uneven terrain, you're trying to balance two wheels with all of your weight, and the rocks and the trail can move, and if they're wet they can move differently, and if there are trees that you have to duck under, so that it just has more things that cause you to lose your balance, and that's the difference between hiking and running and mountain biking. Mountain biking has more ways to cause you to lose your balance.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. A lot of variables. Like when I think about mountain biking is, yeah, you have to be aware of so many things at once. I think that's like the trickiest part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So today, what Ayub and I plan to do is have Ayub interview me, Sifu, and since I'm a number of decades older than Ayub, hopefully I have some things that I can help direct him in some of the things that he's walking into, or questions that he has about my life, his life, other people's lives. And I'm what's known as a polymath, and I probably knew that at a young age because I couldn't get enough of books. I couldn't get enough of great films, conversations with my father and mother, conversations with older people, finding really good teachers, whether I was 6 years old or 36 years old, or even now. One of the things I tell people that I learned from a coach who's got some advanced certificates in sports medicine and athletics and coaching. I asked him about the idea of coaches having coaches, what he thought about that. And he first said to me, every coach needs a really good coach. And he says, better than that, coaches need coaches who are even better than they are, so that they can continue to learn and advance their art and correct things in their own life and in their own coaching. So I'll turn it over to Ayub now and let him interview Sifu and see where we can go with that.
Thank you, Sifu. So the first question that I have for you is the following. So let's say you want to set up a goal or an objective, right? Whatever objective. I mean, it doesn't really matter. What's your criteria when you want to define or set up a goals? Like what variables do you take into consideration?
So the first thing I think about is, what's my current schedule? And if my current schedule is overflowing with too many things, I have to look at that goal and say, where am I going to insert that into my schedule? And over at the Apple store in Reno, just 3 days ago, I had a conversation with a young athletic person who's a technology-oriented person, helping people pick and service their computers, their Apple computers and their iPhones. And after we shared maybe a half an hour of him helping me with my new iPhone, I said, we talked about his athletics, we talked about his background, and I said, do you know that Bruce Lee died from the same cause as Apple computers, Steve Jobs? And he said, oh, that's interesting. Let me think about that for a second. So we talked about it, and basically it was that both of them had too many things going at the same time, and they didn't get enough balanced living, not enough eating and slowing down and letting the food digest. They had days that might have gone 14, 16 hours or 28 hours or 2 days. Steve Jobs might have worked 2 days with no sleep or maybe more. And his biographers can tell you more about that. And Steve Jobs had an imbalance in his diet. He drank a lot of wine, and then that creates problems with too much sugar and too much acidity. And then later in life, when he got pancreatic cancer, somebody taught him about, I think he might have been a fruitarian before that, or he did fruitarian, only eating fruit during that time of healing, and that precipitated his death. I'm not opposed to fruit, but you can't overload your system with too much sugar, and you can't create an acid system in your body. So Steve Jobs died at, I think, 59. Bruce Lee died at 32. And he said yes to everything because he had so much talent and he wanted things done in a certain way. And he didn't have an unlimited budget, unfortunately, because he was really just starting to hit the higher income of his craft, which was martial arts and movies. He didn't have a lot of money before that, and he was sort of ostracized, thrown out of Hollywood for trying to enter as this Asian man. And he lost a lot of roles in movies because people in America in the Western world wanted to show white people and not Asian people having these heroic roles, which is unfortunate. So one of the things I would say to answer Ayoub's question is you've got to have room in your schedule for taking on a new goal, a new project, a new activity in your life.
Interesting, Sifu. But yeah, getting back to what you just said, actually, like, why do you think, this will like to achieve, like in this case, Bruce Lee and Steve Jobs, why does it end up with them basically self-sabotaging?
Yeah, if you look at the history of extremely highly productive people, I think you would find if you looked at the 1,000 most productive people, Thomas Edison comes to mind. My great grandfather actually worked as a master mechanic, which is like an inventor developer. So you come up with ideas, you're under the Edison laboratory umbrella, and you're interacting with Edison in New Jersey. This is where he was. He was someone who had Irish and English origins, and he was born in America, but he's working for Edison, and Edison, very similar to Steve Jobs, they had a lot of money, and they had beautiful homes. Edison more so than Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is more interested in work than a showy lifestyle. Edison did a little bit of both, and they both had this will to achieve these forward-thinking goals. Without Edison, and you take Edison and Tesla, if you remove them from the 1800s and early 1900s, you have maybe 10, maybe 30 years of delay in a lot of inventions around electricity, lighting, sound, all of these types of things, which if people think that the modern era had to happen and it had to advance quickly, they would have been in favor of those people doing what they did to advance the world away from an agrarian society where you're pumping water by hand, where you're lighting candles and lanterns and these types of things, where you're traveling by foot and by horse and by train. So the people who like the modern era and the modern invention, they wanted people like Edison and Tesla, and then later Jobs and Bill Gates and these types of people to push those limits to get these incredible achievements. But in my estimation, for people who are so out of balance, which is almost everyone now in the modern era, you have to look at our great grandparents' time, and you have to look at it with reverence, with respect, with honor, because they often had families that stuck together. They could live off of the land. They could hunt and trap and fish. They could plant gardens and raise animals, and they could communicate with their neighbors and go over and do what's called a barn raising. And so they probably still do this in Italy and parts of Europe, and some places probably in America. The families get together and the people in the same church probably, but it was very common in the 17 and the 1800s, where many people in the town with a variety of skills, even if they had different religious background, they would go and help someone finish their house, do the foundation, build the barn, put up fences. They did more cooperative living, which we tend not to see as much anymore. So I have a little bit of a romantic streak for the good parts, not the closed-minded parts, but the good parts of the lives of our ancestors.
But I mean, actually, like, do you think it's just their intrinsic motivation to achieve this kind of results, or is there something else? Is there some, let's call it external pressure? Let's just call it that.
I can tell you on, let's say Bruce Lee, for example. So I've often said to people that he died from overwork. In Japan, it's called karoshi, death by overwork. And we don't have a word for that I know of. In America, we have a few words: excessive lifestyle, overwork, death by overwork. And in the case of Bruce Lee, he was trying to prove something, I believe, first to himself. And I have thin man syndrome. I've always, as a younger person, was trying to put on weight and muscle. And with my Michael Jackson build, I was not able to do that very well. I exercised this morning for an hour and a half. I can do a lot of advanced exercises, and I'm relatively strong for someone who's my height and my weight, and I'm agile, and I have good grip, and I have good balance. But I always wanted to put on weight, but I'm not short. So Bruce Lee had two things: he was short and he was thin. And then to add more difficulty to him, he had dyslexia. And dyslexia is part of the autism scale, the autistic scale. So he could not read in school, and I believe he wore glasses from a young age. I can't remember that part, but I know later in life he wore glasses, and he died at 32, so he wasn't very old. I didn't need glasses until I was 50. But so Bruce Lee is in school, and it's the time where in Hong Kong, where teachers, of course, were strict back in the 1940s and 50s. He was born right around the time of Muhammad Ali, and people were strict. And he was born during World War II. And one of his first recollections is standing on the top of his building in Hong Kong, seeing the Japanese planes fly over, and he's Chinese, and he's raising his fist to these Japanese fighter planes. And so he had a lot of things to overcome. And so his first thing that he did is he fought his classmates when they picked on him for not being able to follow the lessons in class and not being able to do well in his tests. And when the teacher chose him to answer a question, he would often, and could have been every day or twice a day, go out and fight with these people in his school. And he was already a child actor, and he born in San Francisco. So he had all these things that he could tap into to know about how to handle himself physically, but he never was able to overcome a lot of those things which were inadequacy. And he became this highly efficient physical person, mental person, spiritual person throughout his life. But I would say that he almost didn't accept himself. The society didn't quite accept him. And he was so different that they didn't accept him. And I think that played into him having to prove himself and always trying to put on muscle, speed, etc., and advance his martial arts. So his internal drive made him externally very powerful, and it made him this incredible person. But he flamed out at age 32. But you could say that he lived 9 lives in those 32 years, because when he died, I think he left 5 or 10,000 pages of his writing. He had all of that, and then he developed martial arts, movies, his choreography, fight choreography, his acting ability. He had two children and a wife. So he did so many things in those 32 years, and people remember him now. I mean, he's more famous than Steve Jobs, and I think he probably always will be more famous than Steve Jobs.
Yeah, for me, when you say Bruce Lee, like I have like good memories. Like for me, Bruce Lee is watching movies with my father. That's Bruce Lee for me. Like it's like when I hear Bruce Lee, like just the name, I smile. I just get a lot of memories from my childhood.
One more thing I could add is this idea of what are you trying to prove? So I thought about this morning, this question on my exercise program. So the first website I had was, and it's still available, it's called maintenanceworkout.com. And so what I did with that is I wanted an information source and a video source for people who are already pretty fit, but they want to maintain that through the aging process. And as you mentioned with your schedule, you're a very busy person. So to do transformational fitness, which means you're overweight or you're dysfunctional or you have injuries or bad posture, to do a transformational program like they do with the military people in 60 days or 90 days or whatever the particular boot camp is that you're involved in. They take people from some ineffective state where they were when they came in at age 18 or 24, and now they turn them into this incredibly fit and knowledgeable person in a very short time. And it's all done with a lot of pressure. So it's this pressure cooker. And I think that you can get results out of that, but I don't think it's what you want to do. Like if you get a piece of land that's been destroyed by the elements, wind, rain, too much sun, somebody cut down all the trees, or it was contaminated, you really can't go in and fix that land in a very short time. You really want to do it over the course of 10 years or 15 years. And you do it slowly, and you let the organisms that are in the part of the microbiome, like just like we have in our gut, you allow them to do all this work. You allow animals to poop and feed the microorganisms, and you allow the trees to grow and they hold the soil, and you plant things that fix nitrogen in the soil, like beans and other trees that can do that. And so you do this process and you let nature work over time rather than just coming in with bulldozers and a bunch of mulch and spraying this and trying to fix it quickly. It's too much. It's an inefficient way to do things. So same thing for our body. You want to take on a problem and you want to work through it slowly. And if you work through something slowly, like you climb the mountain slowly, you're going to have enough energy when you get to the top to walk down in a functional way and not hurt yourself. But if you go up the mountain very quickly and you get to the top and you look out and you don't honor it, you don't sit there and meditate and thank things and have lunch or what have you, if you just hurry your way down and you're tired from that way up and you're not really using your proprioception, which is where your body is moving through the air and how the biomechanics of your feet and body are landing, you're not going to enjoy it. First of all, you're going to fatigue the muscles and the physiology of your body, and it's very likely that you could fall from fatigue and the inefficiency of the gait of the way you're walking down or running down the other side. And that's for someone who doesn't know what they're doing. You know, somebody who's an athlete who runs all the time and knows their body, they can run up and down, but they're on maintenance for high performance, right? But somebody who's trying to get fit, they're not on maintenance yet for anything. They're on a starting, like a white belt in martial arts. They're on day one of their program. And so you have to look at the long time of this activity. And that's why I say that it's better to do maintenance fitness. Get fit once to a degree that you can maintain. You don't have to be an elite athlete. Just get to something that you can maintain. I don't even care if you're 30 pounds over a weight that would be your boxing fighting weight, right? Get to that weight. You decide that if you can maintain it, and then you get on a maintenance fitness program that has a lot of variety in it, a lot of fun, a lot of recreation, and then you work that in your system, but you don't allow work and family responsibilities and all these things take away that 30 minutes to an hour and a half that you have every morning. That's your time to take care of your mind, body, and spirit, and allow you to be the most functioning self that you can be.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, the last thing that you said, I think it's really important because you basically were talking about maintenance, right? But the thing is, why do you think people are so like unfit today? Is it because there is this notion of too many quick fixes? So maybe they think I can just quickly fix my physique, my weight, because it's strange to me, right? I don't know, like what do you think about it? Like why is it so easy today to get out of shape?
So this goes back, Ayub, to your first question about goal setting. So if we have the individual and we take the pie chart of their one day in their life, there's 24 hours. Certain amount of time is for eating. Certain amount of time is for digestion. Certain amount of time is for rest while you're digesting, and then sleep at night. Then you're going to the bathroom. There's preparing your food. There's purchasing your food if you don't live on a farm. And there's a few phone calls, and that's not even work. We haven't talked about work yet, right? And so then we go to people who work, whether it's 4 hours or 14 hours, and that's this giant mass of production that you have to do. If you're a busy doctor, and I've seen busy doctors, I'm 60 years old, about to turn 61. I've seen busy doctors. I grew up on a farm and we had to have veterinarians, doctors for animals, come out sometimes. I saw their schedule and they're running to get to the next appointment. They always have someone waiting to get to see them. The same thing with the plumbers. People are sometimes frustrated that the plumber says, I'll be there this afternoon. They can't give a time because the plumber doesn't know when the plumber is going to finish the previous job. And maybe the plumber needs to go in for their chiropractic appointment to get their body put back in alignment before they go to the next appointment. And maybe the plumber didn't know that at the beginning of the day and something happened. And then they show up at the chiropractor and the chiropractor makes them wait. So we don't know what's going on. So this is the life of typical people, the police people, anybody, the teachers. You start out with your normal day and something, it seems, always happens to create a little bit more work and a little bit more redirection of where you're going to put your focus, your intentions, your energy. And so this is how people live. This is why I say, if you don't have a daily program and if you don't do it in the morning, it's very likely that something will come up during the day that's going to take more time, more energy, more focus. And by the end of the day, if you have to solve some of those other things that came up, it might be 6 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the evening. And who has energy after eating 2 to 3 meals, after working all day, and after dealing with stress? Who has energy at the end of the day to go do that? Now, some people do. Some people will make that time. But in my estimation, and I'd love to see a research study that has this information, in my estimation, it would be less than 5% of the people who want to do physical activity that can actually do it at the end of the day after a very challenging day in the life of being a family member and a working person. It would be, and they can do it every day, some physical movement every day. I would say it'd be less than 5% of the people who want to do it that actually can do it at the end of a day, like the ones I just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. It's tough, but I mean, and the interesting thing about this, it's like what's the effect like on the well-being, on the happiness of people that, you know, don't put as a priority their physical well-being. Like I mean, it has to be bad because
So
right?
I'll take an extreme example of one person I know who was not able to do physical activity because this gentleman was disabled and he was in a wheelchair. But he had an incredible mind. He could still use his arms, but he was disabled from the middle of his rib cage down. So even going to the bathroom, he couldn't control that type of thing very easily. Now, this is one person that I've met in my life who could thrive, and I'm sure there are others out there. I'm sure there are many out there without doing physical movement because he was disabled, right? He had no way to do more than pushing him lightly. He didn't have enough spine connection and nerve activity to go out and do like a race, like somebody doing a marathon in a wheelchair. He couldn't do that. But his intellectual side and his open-heartedness, so open mind, open heart, they allowed him to live this incredibly fulfilled life because he helped a lot of people. He was a professor at a university, and he was always talking to people who either wanted knowledge or who tested his knowledge, like other professors in conversations about parts of history. So he was one person I knew that could do that. And if thankfully I'm not disabled, but if I ever got disabled, I would use his method to make my brain and my heart and my interest in things open up and try to compensate for my lack of being able to move my body. So we've started with him. Now we take the other 99.9% of the people who weren't disabled, and they are able to move, but they're just not. Now, you mentioned before we went online today about helping young people overcome their obstacles and coaching these young people and lifestyle and motivation and doing the right thing and advancing their skills and goal setting, these types of things. So when I think about a young kid from my era, anytime there was a chance for us to run, we took off just like a cheetah. We ran as fast as we could to get somewhere as fast as we could. And if there was the bell about to ring at class, we were like maniacs. We ran for the door to be the first to get out the class and then get in the hallway and then run to our lockers. And it was like this constant race, right? And people today, kids, I've been an educator, kids don't do that anymore. They're happy to be with their smartphone. They're happy to be walking slowly to their next thing. If I see people on a crosswalk on a street, old and young, I often see people who are on their smartphone or have their earbuds in, or maybe even without the earbuds in. They walk, I would say 70% of the people I notice walk slowly across the crosswalk. And I'm 60, and when I'm blocking traffic, and it's not a red light, it's just a place where the driver has to stop to allow me to go, I hustle, I get across. I don't want to slow that person down, because what is that? It's like, to me, it's like a power trip. Like, this is my right to be in this walking lane, and I'm going to take my time and get to the other side when I feel like it. No, I don't want to do that. I want to get out of that unsafe thing as fast as I can, and I want to let traffic go to where they have to go. And what's so hard about me walking fast? That's not a hard thing. What are your thoughts on some of that, Ayub?
I mean, yeah, I mean, today it's I like, to be honest, let's say I'm at a restaurant and I see people on their phone instead of talking. Like, I literally want to get up and smash their phones. I just want to do that because it's like, you are at a restaurant. It's a calm atmosphere. Like, you can just talk. I mean, I'm not sure. And actually, this reminds me of something that I was thinking about some days ago. Like what do you think this like this degree of comfort, like, what's the impact of all of this comfort that we have today on people's happiness?
All right. So I'm going to go back to Bruce Lee for a second and talk about his parents' generation. So Bruce Lee's mother's mother was a full-blown German. So he has 1/4 German in him. So that's an interesting little thing that's in his DNA. He grew up in the Kowloon district of Hong Kong, but he also traveled a lot with his parents, and he was born in San Francisco. They were actors, and they traveled a lot, and they were upper middle class people. And upper middle class people often had people that were like servants who could help them with the cooking and cleaning. And when Bruce Lee grew up, there weren't supermarkets as we know them today. And when I was in France in the late 70s and the early 80s, it was common for people to go to the bakery, then the butcher, and then the vegetable store with the fruit store. And they would go to three or four stores to just get those things. And then they would go to a clothing store for clothing. There wasn't like a Kmart that had everything in it, and a Costco that had so many different things in it. And so Bruce Lee's parents, because of their ancestry, they had to work really hard on, in manual labor. Now Bruce Lee's parents were acting. and directing and making money doing that. But his parents did opium, which was common in China in the before the modern era, before let's say the 1970s. Opium use was common, and hashish and other drugs was also common, and nobody thought of it as this horrible crime. It was something that the people who had some money would do, just like the people in Winston Churchill from England did a lot of drinking of fancy drinks, and they would be oftentimes drunk for many hours per day, and then every evening they would get a little bit drunk before and during and after dinner. So these types of things were common. What is that all about? Well, if the people who have some money are doing it, the upper middle class and the affluent people like Winston Churchill, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that they want to make their life easier, and they also want to hide some things, blind themselves to some of the reality and the monotony and the repetition of life, right? Life is very repetitious. But if you take those stories right there, like Bruce Lee's parents getting on another boat to go to another place and perform the same thing, and then do a movie, and movies are very hard on the actors and everybody working on the movie. It's this hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. Oh, the weather didn't cooperate. Oh, the cameraman's delayed, or somebody got hurt. Now we have to wait, and everybody's waiting all the time. And then there's this stress that we're running out of money on the budget to film this thing. So there's also a lot of drugs in Hollywood, not just because of what I've shared, but because of this escapism from the monotony and the balance of life. So if you take all these things I've just shared and you contrast that with a hunting and gathering tribal person, Native American, African tribal person, somebody in Hawaii, somebody in Italy before the Common Era, or up until the hunting and gathering people disappeared from Italy, which was probably in the 1300s or 1200s. I don't know. We'll have to look into that. Maybe it was in the year 600. I don't remember. But you'll have to figure out what these people who live, the Homo sapiens, maybe 250,000 years of Homo sapiens, and then different upright walking people concurrent and before them. What did these people do with the monotony of life? Well, in my estimation, they looked at nature and the sky and everything else in this very spiritual way. And you take spiritual and you combine that with a heightened state of emotion. And heightened state of emotion, people can get that without drugs and alcohol, or they can get it with drugs and alcohol. And the hunting and gathering people may have been able to do that, most of them without any substances, but sometimes with substances, plants, smoking plants and roots, and the toads that have the special material on their back, these psychedelic type things. So if they looked at a short life, let's say a hunting and gathering person might have lived, counting childbirth, death, 22 to 35 years. And if they made it past age 20, maybe they lived till they were 50 or 70, right? You look at the fact that they're doing this similar things day in and day out, but they also moved. They might have moved their camp 20 miles away, and they may have gone to high places in the summertime and low places in the winter. So there's just always this idea that we're not stuck inside of our apartment with all these people that we have to see all the time, without any nature, without the sunrise and the sunset, without going down to the river to get away from people, without going on a hunt or a collection of berries or roots, these types of things. So there's just a lot of variety in the way that hunting and gathering people live to a certain degree. And now you take that to Bruce Lee's parents. That what got missed in the last 100 years is this idea of going into your spiritual side, going into living in a trance, in this heightened state of emotion of gratitude and acceptance, and then this flow of energy through you. And once you master that and you can tap into it, you're almost unstoppable if you have food and water and enough warm clothes. You could almost live out in nature if you have food and water and enough clothes to keep dry and warm. And that's kind of where I've come to, and I've been looking for that thing for the decades of my life, is what these hunting and gathering people had that we should have, and I've tapped into it. So I jokingly tell people that I live like a hunter-gatherer with a laptop.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's actually like the gatherer and the hunter, and even from my work with clients, actually there is a lot to learn from, because our brain, it's incredible, but it has some mechanism that can be easily exploited. So let's say we're talking about gathering or hunting. So if you do it a bunch of times, you know that by taking that path, by finding these trees, by finding this river, you have a high probability of finding, I don't know, this kind of animal. So your brain records that, records everything. So that same mechanism can be replicated with what I like to call cheap dopamine.
Yeah.
So the alcohol, it's basically, I'm getting to a result without paying anything. So with the gatherer, it will be like walking, running, searching. But the problem is the brain doesn't recognize the difference between the two, because if dopamine is released, that means my body, it's progressing. So progress is good. It's recorded as a good thing. So in my estimation, the main thing to do is, at least during the day, finding something in which we are actively paying with effort. So what I do, for example, is I go to the gym, right? So for me, going to the gym, it's not simply working out. It's finding something that might be tough for an hour or two, in which I'm actively paying with effort.
Yeah.
I look at the reward and effort basically as currency. So you either get a reward instantly and you pay later, or you pay now and you get the reward now and later. And I think this mechanism should be in schools. And I never heard it in school. And unfortunately, now there is this get everything quickly. And getting everything quickly means getting everything for free. But there is always a price to pay. And often this price is, anxieties, stresses, and even even worse, to be honest, even worse.
So I did interview in March, I believe, and he's on my YouTube channel, this great professor and MD from Harvard, whose name is Dr. John Ratey, Ratey, MD, psychiatrist, and also athletically inclined, who's written a number of best-selling books. And what he did is, in one of his books, is he looked at some research and some curriculum from Naperville, Illinois, near Chicago, Illinois. And this middle school physical education teacher, he looked at the problems of young people in his era and the era when he was teaching. He passed away, I think, sometime within the last 10 to 15 years. And this teacher said, we have a problem with focus. We have a problem with energy. We have a problem with kids not being able to do things that they should be able to do physically, and balance and playing together. We have a problem with grades. So there's focus, there's kids not doing their homework and then feeling left out when they didn't do their homework, and now they're in class and the class is advancing too fast because they haven't put in their time at home. And they lose focus for a number of reasons. One is their physical and mental side, and then the other is because they haven't done the work. And he said, what are we going to do to change this? He goes, let me try this. So he came up with this program of physical movement that had the kids moving before school started, so they could get this oxygen to their brain. They could get all their cells and their nervous system invigorated. They could take some of their energy and release it. They could get camaraderie with their friends. They could feel exhilaration, maybe euphoria. They could get all that, and then they go into school and they could get through their first 3 classes, let's say, before lunchtime. And then there'd be some movement at lunchtime, hopefully, and eating lunch. And then if I had to do it right, I would give the kids 30 to 40 minutes to just lie down. And you don't have to be asleep, but if you're asleep, great, on some type of a comfortable surface like a thick yoga mat or a grass and a poncho or something, and let them relax, let that digestion happen. So that's what I would add to his work, John Rady's work. And then I would say some more movement and then get back into class. And during each break of class, or even during class, if it's an hour, you get kids up and you get them doing some movement. And maybe you even have a high desk where they could stand with one foot on a stool. So they've got a way to get different postures going on, rather than being in these tiny little school desks where you're just really starting to crumble and fall into your seat. And you don't even have a lot of support. You've got the normal desk go like this. So you've got one side you can put your arm on oftentimes, but not the other side. That's one of the desks. And some only have bars along the side, and you really don't have a good place to put any elbow to move around. So these are some of the things I would add. But the main thing that this teacher from Naperville did is he got kids moving more, especially before school, and their attendance went up, their achievement in classes went up, their behavior was better in class, their focus was better, their weight was more in line with what it should be. And this is this great book, Spark, and you could look on my YouTube channel, which is called The Real Show with Sifu Slim, and look up John Rady, MD, and you'll see that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome, Sifu. I will check it out. And as you said, it doesn't need to be something like it doesn't need to be a revolution. It can be something as simple as, okay, let's do some movement before class and let's see what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's yeah, because like by sitting too much, I mean, I'm just talking from my experience, you feel like your energy is going like down, like you don't feel good, like you wanna get out, you wanna move, like that's actually what's happening.
Yeah, so you can
Yeah.
see from when I was a kid and when my father was a kid and his father was a kid, they moved all the time and we kids couldn't get enough of it. And there was this transition into being adult where, of course, people moved less because they consider that, oh, that's for kids, except for the parents who still went out and played with their kids, or the parents who had a job where they had to use a horse, they had to use their body, like working on cars in Detroit, Michigan, called Motown, Motor City, and physical jobs like in Italy, people who had to deliver milk or deliver meat or deliver magazines, whatever it was. So people with physical jobs oftentimes kept moving, but a lot of those jobs got automated so that the people who used to dig are now they're driving a tractor that does digging. Very efficient to move earth with a tractor as compared to horses and people, right? But what happens to the society when everybody is using a machine and we have a place to click a television and we can say, hey Siri, look up this. You remove part of humanity when everything's automated and using electric energy to do that. And then the electric energy that we use has a cost in terms of pollution, in terms of the semiconductors and the other parts of the computer and the phone that become toxic in these waste sites. So there's always a penalty, it seems, for advancing with the machines. If you keep those advancing, there's always a penalty for us and for the environment when we do that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. There is always like a hidden cost. And sometimes, I mean, not every time, but if we think about it, I think we are able like to understand like the long-term repercussions. But again, I think it's because it's just too comfortable, right? It's just too comfortable to sit down and maybe, I don't know, like play a video game rather than going out and playing some soccer with people, which that was what I used to do. But then, as you said, like you get to a certain age, and it's like, yeah, that's for kids. And even if people get out, like they go to bars, and I mean, it's not like they move there; they're just sitting. And I mean, yeah, the social part is good, but again, you are you are sitting. I don't know, like in the US. I mean, it should be similar, to be honest. I mean, I'm not sure. What's your uh, what's your take on that?
We are the originators of the sedentary lifestyle. We are the originators of the mechanized lifestyle. A lot of this comes from LA. LA, Los Angeles is one of the capitals of invention and technology, and later Silicon Valley. The modern movie industry was very much part of the Los Angeles culture. And, years ago, maybe in 1991, I went and saw a play with a friend in Sacramento, California, where I was living, actually in Carmichael near Sacramento, and I saw a play. And back then, in 1991, a movie probably cost $8.50 if I had to guess, and this play cost $10. And some people around us, I heard somebody say, "Boy, this play is expensive. It's more than a movie." And I said, "Well, let's think about that for a second. These actors aren't getting paid that we're watching in this play. They've had to practice for 3 weeks or 5 weeks just to get this play ready to present to us. There are people who have jobs, most of these people. Some of them may even have two jobs and they have family. Many of them go to church. And so they're taking time to express themselves in this artful way for our enjoyment, and we're participating with them in this thing. We're laughing, we're we're saying ooh and ah when there's different things happening. They're moving our emotions. They're teaching us things during this play, and it's more interactive than a movie. Even if you have a movie where you watch with 3D glasses or AI technology, you're actually in a play. You're participating more in the play with your emotions and your attention than you are in a movie. It's just how the physical power of the dynamic human interaction works. And so I wanted to turn back around and tell these people who thought that the play was expensive that we should be paying these people $30 back in 1991 so that they can actually make money for spending all those 3 to 5 weeks getting ready for this play for our enjoyment, because we give Steven Seagal, famous actor, and we give all these other actors, Al Pacino, Arnold Schwarzenegger, we give them, 10 to $30 million for certain movies, especially these action movies, and they're already wealthy people, whereas these people, most of them in the play, are just regular income people that could use those $30 or part of the $30, because you have to pay for the play and all the setting and all the backdrops. They cost money, and then the play people may have to rent the auditorium where we're seeing that play and where they practice. So all these things, I think we need to think about what the modern era has brought to us, the fact that it's disconnected a lot of us, that it's closed our minds, it closed our hearts, it's made us less cooperative. It's helped us ruin the ocean and ruin the air, ruin the water, ruin the soil. And if that sounds like doomsday talk, watch the documentaries that have been going on for 100, since film began, about what the modern era has done to us. So there are a lot of positive things the modern era has done, including the internet and YouTube and things that I love to use. And they've made my life much more interesting because I can watch a speaker over and over whom I really like, and then I can study things differently because of the internet. So I'm very grateful for that. But we have to take into account lifestyle, and was it better in a lot of occasions on the average in our parents' or grandparents' generation, or is it better now? And we have to assess that and see what we come up with.
Yeah, I mean, it's if I had to use like just two words to summarize a bit like what we have around, I'd say, I mean, I don't want to be too negative about it, but I'd say isolation and consumism or consumerism. I'm not sure which one of the two
Yeah,
is the right word.
consumerism. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I mean, even movies, TV series, junk food, video games, there's a lot of, just us consuming, consuming, consuming. And it's never enough, right? And there is little to none like producing. So let me sit down and write, I don't know, like a thread and write an article, like, the art of producing, the art of crafting. There is a lot of, like, when I think about history, so years ago, what it comes to my mind is people that were inventing, that were producing, that were, like, yeah, thinking, basically thinking and then putting the thinking into practice. But today, like, the main theme that I see is here's the new movie, you have to watch it. So what does it mean to watch it? It's passively consuming it. Because I have friends, I have to be fair, that they do cinema as a job, so they watch Netflix to study. They're not just consuming. It's a consume. They consume for a mean. Like their goal is to, okay, I'm going to reverse engineer this by consuming it so I can produce myself. But that's not, that's not how most people do it. And I think that's having a bad effect, especially on the mental health, because again, you are just passively receiving information. So many of the ideas that you end up having, they are not even yours. Because I don't know what you think about it, but for me, like diet with food, right? It's similar to diet with information. Like you cannot just watch, I don't know, like drama and not, it needs to have an effect on you because that's information you are absorbing. Like it's not, again, it's not, nothing is for free. So if you would just watch sport, you're gonna know less about politics. If you just watch, I don't know, like TV series, maybe your math skills are going down. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's it concerns me a bit, to be honest. This part of the excessive consumerism. It's a bit yeah, I don't know what you think about it, but I don't like it, to be honest. It's just too much today.
Our neurology as human beings is not able to handle the overload that we place on it, especially when we're talking about our status in the world and where we live, how fancy a house that we live in, how fancy a restaurant we go to, how fancy our car is, how some people who don't have money, they're selling a phone, a smartphone like an iPhone, 3 to 6 months after they purchased it for $1,200. They're selling it on the internet for $600 or $800, right? And these could be 16-year-old people or 28-year-old or 40-something-year-old. I wouldn't think that many 60-year-old people are doing that. But the what is that all about? You have a fully functional phone and you're selling it within 3 to 6 months because a new phone came out and you want to have the latest one. So, how did you learn that thing? Where did you come up with that idea? I mean, why are you so susceptible to buying into the corporate advertising and propaganda? And then trying to, if your friend has one, now you have ego issues where you want to get one that's more modern than your friend that has a fancier camera or more memory or has a different type of a, plastic covering on it. I put my email on the back and then I put the plastic covering and then I put the covering on this side, right, to protect it if it falls. And, but this phone, I will probably keep this phone for 4 years if I can, and longer if I can. I use the camera. It's got an excellent camera in it. It's a 1 month old phone, so I'm going to keep it for a long time. So where do you think, Ayub, this in your generation, this overload of having to keep up with the latest stuff and spending money instead of saving money and using it for like a trip to go hang out in nature somewhere? Where do you think this came from?
I think it comes from basically what we said at the start of our conversation. Like getting back to goals, right? Are those goals yours? That's my question. And I will tell you that, unfortunately, like let's make it really simple, right? Let's take a child that doesn't know anything. Can something that's man-made be like the life objective of that child? The child doesn't know about phones. He doesn't know about, I don't know, cars. So how can, because that's what I like to do, right? Like even when we sometimes I have discussions about career objectives, right? And I mean, without getting too much into, let's say, feminism and this, you know, and I ask this, I like to ask this provocatory question. Like, let's say I'm talking to some female friends, and I ask them, how can something that's man-made make you happy? So, for instance, like there is always the subject of career versus family, right? Which I mean, in my opinion, you can have both, right? But how can something that's man-made, so it's not biology, right? We made it. We created this concept of having a career. A child doesn't know what's a career, right? So if we say that a career will make you happy, what we mean is that, it's, I don't know like how to put it into words, but I don't know if you get my point. Like, how can something that's not like natural or something that's not achievable by everyone be that thing that make people happy? To me, it's not possible, because again, it's something exogenous. It's not something that can come within. That's why when we were talking about happiness, I wanted to ask you, like, maybe is it like the definition of happiness, the problem itself? Because today, like when we say happiness, we just mean dopamine, and we are ignoring every other thing. Like you were talking about family before. So for me, it was like serotonin and oxytocin, endorphins. I think that, and that's a thing that I do in my program as well. Like I call it like the happiness protocol, in which we look at the life of the person and we go and we look through it. Like, what do you mean by happiness? What makes you happy? And 90% of the times, it's dopamine. It's seeking something which is external from you. But from the definition of itself, if it's external, that means you depend on it. So you depend on the presence or the not presence of something external, which is, you see, it's a paradox, because if it's not there and you have no control of it, you cannot be happy, which is an absurd, right? You cannot depend, like your well-being cannot depend on something external because you have no control over it. I think that's like the main pitfall, because like the car, when we say I want a better car, it's not guaranteed that you're gonna get a better car. That's not a guarantee. So you're gonna live in this, let's say, unhappiness because you cannot achieve something external. And again, getting back to the start of our conversation, it's external. It's an external objective, and I will say it's not an objective that we actively decide. Like, you cannot be born and be like, okay, my life goal, it's getting a car. It has to be something that comes later. So you see movies, you hear people, you watch TV, and then you get this normalization that, okay, the nice car, it's your goal. But it never was in the first place. That's my problem with the whole argument, right, of consuming. Because when you consume, then it has an effect on you. We cannot escape that. It's impossible.
Why don't we do happiness in a future conversation? We'll talk about the hormones. We'll talk about less is more. We'll talk about goals and how, for our grandparents' generation, happiness was just a little part of the week, and a lot of it was just doing your responsibilities and sucking it up, as we say in English, and getting through the day and doing it as effectively as you could, with a good attitude if you could. And we could talk more about that. And in a future conversation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think absolutely. I think with the happiness subject, you could literally create a new channel and just talk about that. But I mean, yeah, definitely. It's a it's a really important concept, especially nowadays, because again, I think with that we are missing many many parts. We just focus on one part, which is like the seeking of the external objective, but we never look like inwards, and that's why distraction are so dangerous because you stop looking inwards, you just look outside and you forget who you are basically. But yeah, I mean, I would be super happy to do it.
Yeah. We'll connect via email. We'll put that together. And then I've been told in the past that it's good to tie up our conversation in a bow. So let me try to do that with Bruce Lee.
Yep.
If Bruce Lee was still alive, if he were still alive today, and he was a man in his late 70s, early 80s, he would probably tell us that less is more. And I think that's something he never had in his life. The less is more. He always had, each year there was more learning, there was more attention to new things, there was more survival, there was more family, there was more money issues. It just kept building. And then he got famous right at the end of his life. And he also had a broken back. So he started out with his broken back with 3 pills a day that were very strong barbiturates, as far as I know. And by the end of his life, and I got this from an inside person who was very close to him, and I wish no disrespect to any of his family members or friends, but this is common when you break your back and you're in pain and you're a martial artist, an athletic person, and a movie producer, director, funding source, all these types of things, funding seeker. He to function, he just needed to have his pain numbed. And so by the end of his life, he was sometimes doing these 8 pills a day, where he started out with 3 pills a day to handle his broken back problem and his pain, and his functionality. So I would say that he would probably agree with me, and he would preach less is more. He, like the great grandmaster in martial arts that he could have been, if he had chosen that route, he could have been like the guru more, and having people come to him, not worried about the money and the fame, but just had come to him. And there's a guy named Satguru who's made his livelihood over the last few decades of being that type of a person. And Bruce Lee had the capacity to do that. And I think he might have suggested that that would have been a path that would have been better for his mind, body, and spirit than always pushing, always saying yes, always going for an advancement in whatever he was doing to a very incredibly high level, that it put so many demands on his mind, body, and spirit that in the Overwork, karoshi, death by overwork, and imbalance, that's what I believe happened to Bruce Lee. And I think if he had had the right guru who slowed him down, which wasn't easy in the 60s and 70s, because there was so much newness and discovery, sexual revolution, Vietnam, peace movement, cinema industry, all these types of things, the martial arts craze and the martial arts movie craze, all these things drew him in and allowed him to advance in so many areas. But if you had a coach like a Satguru who said, Bruce, Sifu Lee, what's really important to you as a Sifu? Is it becoming a better Sifu, or is it becoming this Hollywood movie star and revolutionizing martial arts movies at the cost of your life, and at the fact that your 2 kids aren't going to have you around, and all of your loved ones and your friends aren't going to have you around? What would you rather have, Sifu Bruce? The Satguru lifestyle of balance with some athletics, or this workaholic like a Steve Jobs who kept pushing all the time? That's what I think Bruce Lee needed. He may have said yes, he may have said no. I think Steve Jobs was less coachable. I think Bruce Lee was more coachable in those respects. And I think if he had that, he might have chosen the less is more lifestyle, and he might have chosen life till he was 80, 90, or 102, rather than pushing and dying out at age 32. And that's, of course, speculation, but I think those are things that would be fun to have further conversations about.
Yeah, Sifu, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we will have time and the occasion to dig deeper into that, of course. Good.
So there's the end of our conversation with Ayub in Bologna and Sifu today in Reno. And we'll do more. And we ask you to give us a like, consider subscribing, and consider bringing in other guests for conversations that you want us to share in the future. And please check out our content. We'll list our contact for social media and things down in the body of the email. Mine is pretty easy, Sifu, S-I-F-U, slim.com. And that has all of my YouTube channels and other information and books on there. And we'll put Ayub's information down below as well. Ci vediamo, amico. And how do I say? Hasta la prossima. See you next time in Italiano.
It's alla prossima.
Alla prossima. Aloha, brother.